Hi, everyone. I am Kate Kelly from Lewis Creek Association and LCA's South Chittenden River Watch Volunteer Water Quality Monitoring Program. I want to talk to you today about how we can take better charge of our lake's future by using a watershed approach. We have been learning about our water quality over the years, and we want to share this information with you and invite you to network with us as we work to better achieve an all-in approach to improving our water quality. We invite you to join LCA, where we can best coordinate and decide how to encourage more action and engagement at all levels of our communities. So to begin with, I wanted to talk to you briefly about the LaPlatte watershed. This depiction is made by the Waldorf School students, and they drew the lower LaPlatte watershed with masks of different animals and qualities that make up the border of the image you're looking at, as well as cards that say something about the animals depicted who all live in the watershed. Note that there are several unique species that use this watershed, including several rare or unusual amphibians and reptiles, including the uncommon blue-spotted salamander, the rare four-toed salamander, and the uncommon northern map turtle. So to give you a little bit of background about this watershed we live in, as you may know, Vermont was once entirely under a glacier up until about 13,500 years ago. As the ice retreated, it blocked the northern end of what is now Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain now drains north to the St. Lawrence River and out to the Atlantic Ocean. Because the ice was blocking the northern end, fresh water filled in the area you see in blue on the left side of the screen to form what was known as Lake Vermont. The area in the darker blue is the present-day Lake Champlain, and the star is a midpoint between Charlotte, Heinsberg, and Shelburne. Most of the Champlain Valley was at the bottom of this lake. Because there was no vegetation as the glacier receded, lots of erosion occurred and soils washed down rivers. The soils that washed the farthest were the smallest sediments or clays, and they were deposited at the very bottom of Lake Vermont. This means now that we in the Champlain Valley have many clay soils, which are very fertile, so we have lots of agriculture. But clay soils also hold nutrients. They bind to them, and they're highly erodible, meaning that they erode or wash down rivers easily. They're also the last to settle out of the water column. In other words, when we get a big rainfall and we have a bunch of rocks and sediment moving down rivers, the big rocks drop out of the water column quickly, followed by the smaller rocks, and followed at last by those smallest clay particles. That means that those clay particles, once they get moving in a water column by a big rainstorm and erosion, get carried a long way. In other words, they go all the way out to the lake potentially before settling out of the water column. Because they carry nutrients with them, this leads to increased nutrients in the lake. So I'd like to talk to you about the history, a little bit of Vermont and our land use history. We originally had substantial Abenaki settlements on the floodplains of the Missisquoi, Winooski, and Otter Creek. There were also settlements around Bristol, Moncton, and Vergennes. The native people relied on corn, beans, and squash, and wild plants. By 1609, the Abenaki left Champlain Valley to escape warfare with the Mohawk tribe. Europeans started large-scale deforestation upon their arrival to Vermont. Merino sheep craze began in the mid-1800s, and by the 1840s, there were 6 sheep for every 1 person in Vermont. 80% of the land was cleared of trees. Logging was done for farming and clearing land, but also to create potash. They would burn the trees to get the ashes, which could create lye soap or potash for fertilizer. There was a lot of erosion. The land couldn't support the crops because of the sheep overgrazing. With the invention of the refrigerated boxcar in the mid to late 1800s, there was a switch to dairy. I found this historic article in the Burlington Free Press from 1873 saying that the farmers of Pawlet are giving up sheep raising and going into the manufacture of cheese. In more modern times, forests have regrown as farms have gone out of business. But now we are starting to lose forests again after 150 years of forest recovery and expansion. Just to give you a little bit of historic photos to let you know what this may have looked like. This is Heinsberg farmland looking northeast from the south of town and west of Silver Street. You can notice that there is a lot of cleared land. Also note that the church on the right is no longer there. This image is looking at Lake Iroquois from the west, so we're looking east in Heinsberg. You'll note the cows and of course the clearing all the way down to the edge of the lake. This image is of a log drive on the White River near Sharon. Just look at the number of logs and the cleared land that happened there. Okay, so after World War II, there were many extra chemicals left over. They had excess nitrogen and nitrate from bombs. Much more fertilizer was applied to the land. As you can see in this chart, post-World War II, the fertilizer use really crept up. Now, this fertilizer that was applied to the land is referred to as legacy phosphorus because it is still in our soils. When streams erode, they take these nutrients along with the soil particles down to the lake. We've also historically done some sort of strange things to our rivers to try to protect our farmland or our backyards. The Army Corps of Engineers straightened rivers in the 1900s in Heinsberg. So on the left side of the screen is the LaPlatte River in Heinsberg, near the intersection of O'Neill Road and Shelburne Falls Road. This area was not straightened, so it had some natural sinuosity in the river. On the right side is an image of the LaPlatte River flowing through the south and west side of Heinsberg, and this area has been straightened. You can see how straight the river is in this picture near Charlotte Road. Both of these were from 1962 aerial photos. Okay, so moving along, in 1972, we had the Clean Water Act, and Lake Champlain was declared impaired for phosphorus. There was a 2002, there was a total maximum daily load for phosphorus in Lake Champlain. This TMDL, or total maximum daily load, places a cap on the maximum amount of phosphorus that is allowed to enter the lake and still meet Vermont's water quality standards. In 2011, the EPA disapproved the 2002 TMDL, and in 2016, there was a new TMDL approved. Okay, so let's talk briefly about the water cycle. Many of you probably learned this when you were kids, but it's worth touching on again to make sure we all understand what happens with water. Okay, so on the left side of the screen, you'll see precipitation coming from rain or snowfall. Naturally, in most systems, this leads to infiltration, where the water is able to soak into the ground and recharge the groundwater. There are sometimes limits to this, like a confining layer in the soil, which doesn't allow it to seep in. Some water will run off across the top of the ground, or it may enter a surface water like a stream, a river, or a lake. There's also evapotranspiration, which you see designated as ET in this image. So the evapotranspiration occurs from many places, as well as from the surface water. This then forms clouds, which then rain or snow to start the cycle over. Humans, as you know, sort of on the right side of this screen, have modified this system in many ways. We may pull water out of the ground for irrigation or drinking water, and we change runoff patterns. When we have agricultural fields or urban environments with impervious surfaces, that doesn't allow the water to soak into the ground like it would in a natural forested system. So let's look at that for just a minute. You'll see the changes from the left side of your screen, which is a natural ground cover like a treed forested system, to the right side of your screen, which is a city setting with 70 to 100% of impervious surface area. So you'll note that there is, for example, 10% runoff in the natural system, but in the city environment, there's 55% runoff. there is about 25% shallow infiltration and 25% deep infiltration in that natural ground cover situation, and 10% shallow infiltration and 5% deep infiltration in the city setting. So clearly less infiltration, more runoff. And one of the things that we're concerned with is not just the amount of runoff, but also the fact that by having more runoff, we have greater volume in our streams, which increases the velocity or speed of the streams. And therefore that can cause erosion of stream banks. This contributes to lake pollution because there's more sediment which carries phosphorus moving to the lake. So what happens when too many nutrients reach the lake? I'll play a quick video here to talk to you about eutrophication, which happens when we have too many nutrients in our lakes.
Eutrophication is a process that can happen in a water body, like a river or lake, when too many nutrients are added to the system. Eutrophication starts when fertilizers, which are rich in nutrients like nitrate and phosphate, are washed into the river or lake system. This leads to an increase in nutrient concentrations in the water. The nutrients are food for algae, and the algae grow and reproduce quickly, forming a thick green bloom in the water. This algal bloom will absorb sunlight shining on the water, so the sunlight can't reach the bottom. Plants who need this light to photosynthesize will die. The algae will also start to die when they eat up all of the nutrients and run out of food. Next, bacteria start to break down the dead plants and algae, and that releases more nutrients back into the water, continuing the algal bloom cycle. The bacteria, with a continuing supply of food, reproduce into much larger numbers, consuming oxygen as they grow and respire. There's not much oxygen in the water to begin with, so when the bacteria consume it quickly, it might run out completely. Water without oxygen is called anoxic. If the water turns anoxic, all non-bacterial life in the water, including fish and other animals, will die. So, eutrophication happens when nutrients are added to water, which causes an algal bloom, cutting off sunlight and feeding bacteria. The bacteria use up oxygen in the water, which becomes anoxic, causing everything living in the water to die. Eutrophication is one reason why we need to be careful with fertilizers when we're growing crops.
Okay, so clearly phosphorus and nutrients are a problem. I'll also mention that they can be a problem not just for algal blooms, but for other causes as well. We'll get into that in just a minute. So as a reminder, Lake Champlain is impaired by phosphorus, and it has a TMDL, a total maximum daily load value. But some of our rivers and streams are also impaired waterways. So on this slide, you'll see a mention of the impaired waterways in our area. They include the McCabe's Brook, which is impaired by nutrients for aquatic life support, meaning that it does not support life well. Shelburne Bay is impaired by PCBs for fish consumption, as well as phosphorus enrichment, so too much phosphorus. Monroe Brook in Shelburne is impaired by stormwater, runoff, erosion, and land development. LaPlatte River is impaired for E. coli from agricultural runoff and mercury at the mouth for walleye. And Mud Hollow Brook, which is a tributary to the LaPlatte, is also impaired for E. coli due to agricultural runoff and stream bank erosion. Okay, so why do we care? What does it really matter if our lake is having these problems with algal blooms, if we're getting too much phosphorus in the lake? Roughly 20 million gallons of water are pumped from the lake each day to supply drinking water to about 145,000 people. That's one concern, absolutely, that we need to be aware of. We don't want to pollute drinking water for all these various people. Fish and other aquatic life can have die-offs, and they can have other effects from these increase in nutrients. So on the bottom left of your screen, you'll see a picture of a leopard frog with some strange leg issues going on. There's sort of an additional portion of a leg popping out that left side. So we see these frogs that have deformities. This is caused by increased nutrients that then increase a parasite that burrows into the frog legs and causes these deformities. They then are unable to hop as easily. They get eaten more easily. So there are issues besides just die-offs that we may not even be aware of, but are happening due to these increased nutrients. There is less ability for us to swim and recreate safely on the lake. Some cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, release toxins that can affect your skin, kill dogs and kids, and obviously make it unsafe to swim. It can make fish unsafe to eat. And finally, property values are decreased. In Georgia, they recently reduced home values by $50,000 each due to blue-green algae in that area. So St. Albans Bay and Shelburne Bay suffered the most significant decreases in water clarity since 2010. In the past half decade, water clarity in Shelburne Bay decreased by 0.8 meters and by about 0.7 meters in St. Albans Bay. The UVM study showed that with a decrease of just 1 meter of water clarity, so we're already almost there at 0.8 meters in Shelburne Bay, Vermont lakeside communities would lose $16.8 million in economic activity and approximately 200 full-time jobs. Seasonal homes would depreciate in value by 37%, and year-round single-family homes would suffer a 3% loss, according to the report, an assessment of the economic value of clean water in Lake Champlain. Lake-related tourism during the summer months faces a $12.6 million drop in summer expenditures with this 3-foot decrease in clarity. Lakeside communities would endure these losses during the months of July and August alone, which are Vermont's busiest months for tourism and seasonal lodging. John Erickson, an economist at the University of Vermont who worked on the study, said, "This is a $300 million at risk because of water quality problems. It's important for the public to know that any kind of improvement that we make in water quality, any kind of regulations we put into place, have both big environmental impacts and huge economic benefits. This is part of the Vermont economy that is at risk to water quality problems." So there are a lot of factors that affect water quality. We've already learned about a few of them. We'll watch a short video now to better understand some of these factors and how they might affect us. Note that this video shows a good condition or a natural condition, followed by mistakes that have been made in the past. Okay, so let's note that we need to undo what has been done in the past, such as river straightening, to minimize impacts of flooding in communities and to allow for healthy water quality downstream. Reminder just for you guys that the erosion and sediment movement contributes to phosphorus loading in the lake downstream, especially with our highly erodible clay soils. And I want to point out here as well that all of our towns are interconnected. We'll look at a map in just a minute of how our watershed connects us all, but it's crucial that we work together in our area and as an entire watershed to improve water quality. Okay, so the graph you're looking at now shows how much phosphorus goes into the lake by the type of land cover, such as forest, agriculture, or developed land. On the left, on the pie chart, is the amount of phosphorus that reaches the lake. In the middle is the land cover percentages for the Lake Champlain Basin. And on the right, it shows how much phosphorus reaches the lake by land cover type. It's worth noting that despite only covering 4% of the land, developed land contributes 16% of the phosphorus to the lake. This is the highest load by land cover at 0.51 metric tons per square mile. Agriculture has the next highest load by land cover at 0.25 metric tons per square mile. Although forests contribute very little load per square mile, they make up a lot of land cover at 73%, so they contribute a fair bit of the load. Okay, so I want to go into some details now about what we do as Lewis Creek Association and the South Chittenden River Watch program. So we monitor water quality in a variety of watersheds, including Heinsberg, Shelburne, Charlotte, and a little bit of North Ferrisburg. On this screen, you'll see many of our town's waterways are interconnected. For example, the LaPlatte River, which is in dark blue on your screen, begins in Heinsberg, and then it flows through both Charlotte and Shelburne and drains out into Shelburne Bay. What we do upstream, for example, here in Heinsberg, affects the water quality downstream and in Lake Champlain. We also monitor 2 direct to lake drainages. These are smaller systems that drain directly into Lake Champlain. They are the Thorpe Brook and its tributaries in Charlotte, and then Kimball Brook, which is in Charlotte and North Ferrisburg and drains into the Lake Champlain as well. The purple you see on your screen is McCabe's Brook, which drains into the LaPlatte almost directly at the mouth to Lake Champlain. And the light sort of aqua color is Patrick Brook in Heinsberg, which also drains into the LaPlatte River. So here's what we do at those locations. We take samples of water, usually after a rainstorm. Samples get sent to the state lab where they are analyzed. And this is part of a larger program that is run by the State Department of Environmental Conservation to understand water quality. We sample for a variety of of things at these locations. Almost always we sample for phosphorus, nitrogen, sometimes for solids or sediment, and for chloride. We do that because for phosphorus and nitrogen, they are nutrients and they contribute to these algal blooms we were just talking about, as well as the biological impacts. Sediments can carry phosphorus and can also cause biological impacts just by simply smothering aquatic organisms in sediment. Chloride, which is found in road salt, can kill aquatic life. And by sampling in certain ways, we can estimate how much phosphorus is traveling to the lake with these rain events. We can also judge if we sample at low flows, so not after a rain event. We can judge if the water sample is exceeding the state's water quality standards. So then what do we do with all these data we collect? Well, the data are shared with towns in the state to see water quality trends and for use when determining impairment of rivers, and also shared with the EPA. And they help inform our identification of problem areas and implementation of fixes and solutions through our Ahead of the Storm program. We've developed a scorecard map that shows the locations of some of our water quality data collection points and those and the data results at those points. So this map was developed in 2016 and was based on 10 years of water quality samples in these watersheds. Each square you see is a different sampling location. So for example, this location right here is one location on the river. Within that square, there are 4 smaller squares that show conditions of different parameters, including phosphorus, solids, chloride, and E. coli, which is a bacteria. Red means that there's a lot of the parameter and it's poor water quality. Yellow is moderate and green is good water quality. You'll notice that there are high levels of phosphorus, which is in the upper left corner of each of these squares. High levels of phosphorus throughout the watershed. Areas of the watershed also have high levels of solids, and sections of the LaPlatte and Mud Hollow Brook are impaired for E. coli. McCabe's Brook is impaired by nutrients for aquatic life support. Also included in this product, this scorecard map, is a variety of projects identified through reports, and these can help us prioritize and look at areas that might need fixes. Okay, so what can you do to help? So we look at the 3 S's to help us understand how best to manage for water quality. The Ahead of the Storm program helps communities change the way stormwater is managed on properties to reduce water pollution and be more prepared for extreme weather events and impacts of climate change. 15 municipal and private properties have been selected to become demonstration sites to showcase more optimal conservation practices in a variety of landscape settings. So on the left side of your screen, you'll see an image for slowing the water down. This is the first of the 3 S's. We want to slow the water down so that it doesn't erode and cause problems that way. So in this case, we've slowed water down by putting in check dams, or essentially piles of rock, in roadside swales or ditches. This is along East Thompson's Point Road in Charlotte, and we're trying to slow the water down in this road ditch before it reaches the stream. In the second image in the middle, you'll see a rain garden that we recently put in at Shelburne Community School. This used to be just straight grass lawn in the middle of the circle where the buses turn around. We installed this rain garden, which allows water to filter through the soil and for nutrients like phosphorus to get used by the plants in the rain garden, and then allow the water to sink into the ground instead of going straight into pipes that go out to the brook, which was the original design there. And then finally, the third image is to spread water out. We want to allow brooks and streams to spread out, in this case, to access their natural floodplain. This is at the Heinsberg Town Garage and Beecher Brook. Originally, buildings were very close to the stream, and there was a large berm next to the stream that was holding water and not allowing it to spread out onto its floodplain. So we, in conjunction with the town of Heinsberg, were able to move those buildings back out of the floodplain and then do some construction work to remove the berm, create a natural floodplain, do some rocks and logs in the stream to help raise the level of the brook. And as you can see in this image, although at this point we didn't have our trees planted on the floodplain, the Halloween storm last year happened right after we had completed the site work. And as you can see on the left side of the screen, the river did exactly what it was supposed to do. It came out onto the floodplain and was able to spread out, slow down, and eventually hopefully sink into the ground. Okay, so what else can you do to help? If you are a private landowner, there are lots of things you can do around your house to help. I won't read everything on this page, but we do have a handout that will give you some ideas about and other resources that you can look at for managing your property for water to help improve water quality. And I'm going to play just a few videos here to help you see some of these ideas in action, because I think that is sometimes helpful to see what we're talking about instead of just read about it. Okay, so this first one is going to be one of my favorites because it doesn't require a lot of work. In fact, for this solution, it will actually save you time and work, which is always a good thing in these busy times.
In the decade between 2001 and 2011, the Mad River Valley lost 500 acres of forest. Our forested landscape is being cut away, one tree at a time, in backyards across the valley to create lawn, improve views, or make new homes. Smooth green lawns and unobstructed mountain views come at a price. We can't afford to lose the trees that slow water down and stabilize soils, the natural assets that reduce flooding and erosion for us and downstream villages. The good news is we can do something about it. Just as the forest has been lost one tree at a time, it can be brought back one landowner at a time. Remember these steps. Plant it. Consider what lawn you don't need. Can you bring in your wood's edge with another row or two of trees? Are there whole sections of your lawn you don't use? More natural cover also provides valuable habitat for a diverse range of native and migratory wildlife. Sink it. Rain gardens hold water and allow it to sink into the ground. They can replace regular perennial gardens or lawn. Buffer it. Consider planting a swath of native, woody vegetation along streams on your property, even along the little ones. Leave it. Consider not mowing the sections of your lawn that you don't use. Stumped by how to make your yard more storm smart? Request your Storm Smart visit from Friends of the Mad River today. We'll work with you to green up these green mountains. Your Storm Smart yard will also invite important wildlife back to the landscape and make a real difference for our community. And there's less lawn to mow or to hear others mowing on Sunday mornings.
So that's always a good solution. Less mowing, in my book, is a good thing. Okay, so here's another idea of something you can do around your house. If you have downspouts, this is a great solution, and gutters.
Lately, there's been a lot of worrisome reports on water quality in Lake Champlain. We all love swimming and boating in the summer, but, well, sometimes the lake isn't as clean as it could be, and it's frustrating because, really, what can we do about it? Actually, there's a lot you can do to take better care of the lake. But before we get to that, let's start at the beginning. A lot of people think that the water from rainstorms flowing into storm drains goes to a facility to be treated. Not true. That water, and everything in it, flows directly into streams and rivers and ends in Lake Champlain. That's why it's so important that we all do our part to keep stormwater clean. Let's take a look at the stormwater runoff that comes from your property. Maybe there are some ways to slow it down and make it cleaner. As stormwater moves over impervious surfaces like your roof or driveway, it picks up whatever is on the surface, things like oil or sediment. It also picks up speed, which can lead to erosion downstream. One way you can slow the flow and help keep stormwater clean is by proper placement of the downspout from your gutters. Downspouts should always empty onto your lawn to allow the water to absorb into the soil. Or you can capture that water in a rain barrel and use it to water your garden. If you don't have a garden to water, maybe it's time to change that. If you plant a rain garden, it will slow down the flow of water and allow it to be absorbed into the ground, which acts as a natural filter against pollution. Rain gardens are best placed where they can capture stormwater runoff from your roof or driveway and help it absorb into the ground. Also, please remember that the only thing that belongs in a storm drain is rainwater. Never dump oil or paint in a storm drain. Lawn clippings and leaves shouldn't be blown into the street. They actually contain phosphorus that contributes to algae bloom in the lake. Yard waste can be composted, and leaving grass clippings on your lawn actually improves the soil. Another way you can help keep the lake clean is to do any fertilizing of lawns and gardens in the fall, not in the spring. Spring rains can wash all those nutrients right into waterways, contributing to algae blooms in the lake. Most Vermont soils don't need fertilizer, but if a soil test says yours does, apply it at the end of the summer so it can work into the soil all fall and winter. Now that you know how you can impact the health of our waterways, what project will you take on first to help keep stormwater runoff clean? Go to smartwaterways.org to learn more.
Okay, so those are a few good ideas for right around your house. And there's one other that I feel is very important. If you live on a rural road or you have a gravel driveway or a private road that is not maintained by the town, here are a few tips for maintaining your driveway so that you don't have to deal with the large expenses of washouts and regrading.
Tired of washouts, plugged culverts, and gullies down your driveway? Shoveling, regrading, and costly repairs each season? Annoyed when perfect swim days aren't so perfect because of a cloudy river? Stop getting pushed around by the weather. Get Storm Smart. With just a few simple steps, you can turn your driveway into an inviting entrance to your home that looks great and supports crystal clear swim holes and doesn't wash away your hard-earned dollars. When designing, installing, or improving your driveway, remember these steps and washouts will be a thing of the past. The right stuff. First, make sure you or your contractor chooses the right stuff for driveway work. Especially for sloped sections, ask for SurePack or Stay Mat. It's worth a little extra money up front so it stays put over time. And be sure you or your contractor packs down the material so that it won't wash away with the first rain. Next up, round it for the rain. Grade your driveway so the center is rounded. This way, water will shed off to the sides instead of running down the whole length. Slow the flow. If your driveway is long or steep and it accumulates runoff, you can manage that with water bars or small culvert crossings. Or turn any gutter or foundation drain outlets into vegetated areas away from driveways that can be eroded. Give it an easy exit. Add rocks or woody vegetation to slow it down wherever water washes off your driveway or exits a culvert. Stumped by how to make your driveway more storm smart? Request your Storm Smart visit today from Friends of the Mad River. We'll work with you to make your downer driveway a thing of the past. Your Storm Smart drive will save you and the town money, help keep your downstream neighbors safe, and give us all more summer days with crystal clear swim holes.
Okay, so those are some great ideas for what you can do on your own properties. There are a few other things that I would suggest that you could consider. If you have a little time to volunteer, you could sign up to be a water quality sampling volunteer with us, with South Chittenden River Watch. My contact information is on the screen. You can reach out via email or phone call and let me know that you're interested in helping out. You can support your town's funding of Lewis Creek Association for water quality sampling. We also do other projects, including invasives removal. If you're involved or would like to get involved in your town committees, there are many changes that could be made to your zoning, planning, town plan regulations, including improving river corridor protections in your town. Those are things that Lewis Creek Association can help out with, providing our knowledge to help improve our protections in our towns. And of course, you can always go to our website, lewiscreek.org. If you look under the South Chittenden River Watch program or the Ahead of the Storm program, you'll find a lot more materials, a lot more information about some of the things we've talked about today and what we do, as well as our reports and water quality scorecard map that I showed you. So there's a lot that we can do together, and I encourage you to reach out so that we can collaborate as towns within this larger watershed to improve our water quality and to improve that of Lake Champlain over time. So thank you so much, and please reach out with any questions you might have.